I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. On each of these episodes, Jeremy Floyd and I examine one movie worthy of the coveted Midnight Movie showtime. We're happy you could join us for today's chat as we brave the narrow corridors of Nightmare Alley. In some ways, we've been down this alley before. We talked about the 1947 Nightmare Alley back in episode 54. But now that we have Guillermo Del Toro's new Nightmare, we're schlepping our souls down to the old carnival to see what the sneaks and geeks are up to this time. Stanton Carlyle, a drifter turned carny, learns the art of a mentalist act from two seasoned pros. With this knowledge, Stanton will convince a wealthy dowager that he truly has the gift of second sight, but what will happen when he tries to run the same play on a bigger fish? Guillermo Del Toro directs Bradley Cooper, Rooney Mara, and an all-star cast in 2021's Nightmare Alley. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. Please enjoy.
Step right up and behold one of the unexplained mysteries of the universe. Is he man or beast?
All right, welcome back. We are doing a new show today. It's Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. And with me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Well, I'm getting a feeling. Yes. We're not alone, Brian. I'm getting a name. It's Alex Vlahov from the OnlyFilmNoir film account.
Oh my God, Jeremy, you're a mentalist.
Incredible. Every time.
Incredible is right.
He's with us. He's in the room.
Welcome back, Alex.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me back. Always a pleasure.
I mean, since we're talking about a film noir, and since we already talked about the original with you, we had to do it.
This makes perfect sense.
We had to conjure Alex Vlahov.
We materialized him.
You know, doing that episode really made me appreciate going into this one because it was so top of mind. So fun as always.
I agree fully. Yeah. Today we're trying a different format out. Today we're going to be doing one movie, and the idea that we had, or they were thrown around, that we were going to be doing newer movies. What's nice about this one is it's a movie from 2021 or end of 2021, but it's also a remake, and I'd say somewhat of a great remake of one of the original noirs that we watched on our horror noir show with Alex. So it's good that we're talking about the remake here and some of those changes and like what you guys thought of it. And I think we can just riff from there. This. See what happens. I'd like to start.
This one definitely cranked up the horror on the horror.
Oh
noir.
Man, for sure. This is definitely a horror noir, and it's definitely a remake done by Guillermo Del Toro for sure. Yeah.
It's not going to win Best Picture, but I want it to. I just want to say that before anything. I think it's incredible that it was even nominated. In a way, the nomination is the win. But, oh, wow. I loved this film.
I did too. And I'm not one for a lot of remakes. I think that sometimes they are by the numbers. I do agree that this one is also a very by the numbers remake. It is like kind of a beat for beat. But I think that there was a bit of modernization that was done throughout, whether it be, through technology or things like that in cinema. But I also think that the storyline was modernized and the storyline was stronger. Characters were stronger, motivations were stronger, and it just made it hit much harder than the original. And also it was much easier to follow, like the through line of this one in general. But I did think that this was a good remake, and you could tell Del Toro's just a big fan of old Hollywood, and he really kind of brought that into the modern world.
Did you notice it was all on the precipice of World War II starting? And right. One thing I found really interesting
with that Chaplin guy.
Well,
just 40.
It's kind of in the background as America's going to war
because they were just invading Poland by like the middle of the movie. They said that
it's sort of right before we enter the war. And what I find interesting just about noir in general, there's this like whole idea of World War II ends, and the constraint of having to have a happy ending is what allows noir to flourish. It's a very post-noir genre. So in this movie, you're getting a kind of a noir tale, but pre-noir, before the studio system started cranking them out with regularity. Because again, not having to have that happy ending during wartime really allowed this genre to come to fruition, which so influenced the look, the style. I listened to a couple interviews with Del Toro around this. One thing that he pointed out, and guys, let me know if you saw this, a lot of the sets are basically hallways like very skinny corridors.
Interesting.
And when
What's
you
the
think
purpose?
I think that there's this sort of, well, it's in the title, alley, right?
Oh, right.
This, you know, like these boulevards, these sort of like skinny passages that are inescapable. When I think about it, Kate Blanchett's beautifully designed office is very hallway shaped. The final scene with Tim Blake
long,
Nelson,
yeah.
great little cameo at the end.
Yeah.
That room is basically a hallway. Then there's of course like the maze. Like there's it's in the title. It should be a giveaway. But from the set design, he implemented hallways. And the other thing I love was circles. A lot of circles above the characters. And
Right,
that
or
goes
hallway.
back to the baby, you know, the baby with the eye, the sort
Yeah.
of all-seeing fate.
Quanto
Yeah.
in a jar.
Exactly. Apparently, there was much more made of that early, which I think he used it enough. I'm so glad that it wasn't like a major part of the plot. But the idea of the all-seeing eye.
It did come back quite a bit, and then that all-seeing eye was also on Stanton's mask whenever he would do the show, so it kind of had that similar third seeing eye. Yeah.
It would be above elevators,
Like
just
the
a little
Pinkerton's
you know.
logo.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting that you pointed that out. I mean, I guess it's true that a lot of film noirs, or what we think of as film noirs, like, you know, they were filmed from, you know, sort of the 46 through the maybe 58, somewhere in there, in the real alleyway, if you will, of the post-war years, right? But it's funny because a lot of the seminal film noirs kind of came out of books that were written in the 30s. You know, all the James M. Cain stuff.
Such a good point.
Which is, you know, 20s and 30s.
I totally see where you're going with this. This is the same deal with this source material.
And exactly. Well, and then even you get Maltese Falcon, which is 41, or the classic Maltese Falcon is 41 anyway. And then, you know, Big Sleep is 39, I think. And it's like, you know, so there is a little bit of that. What do you call it? Like the plateau of the Depression, or the deepest valley of the Depression there. And you know, like the Drifters, all those kinds of things.
I just want to point out, Big Sleep is the first year you mentioned, 1946, is Big Sleep's year. That's why I keyed in on when you mentioned that, because that's the Big Sleep year. And then Maltese Falcon is a little bit before that, but you're absolutely
41,
right in the
yeah.
timing. You're absolutely right.
It's also sort of just about those very tumultuous years between, I don't know what, you know, like people who were sort of little kids during Prohibition, you know, young adults during the Depression, and adults during the war were, you know, going through a lot of shit, and it shaped a lot of their outlook on things, which is why you get some of that maybe you know, the more cynical stuff in it. Despite the fact that, like, you're right, like, you know, part of the thing is like, oh, every criminal has to be caught, or, you know, brought to justice with the Hays Code and everything, and so there's always sort of a happy ending.
Not here.
Even though sometimes they're with a happy ending with a caveat. And I mean, yeah, and in this one, I guess they were excited about being able to do the unhappy ending. I mean, like,
The story's a loop. That's the one thing that he kept saying in interviews. It's a loop.
kind of, but like in the original, it's a loop. In this one, like it doesn't really do that, and it's funny. I like definitely have to give it up for Del Toro's production design in every single one of his movies. It's just,
oh my God,
you know, it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
I mean that office you're talking about and everything else. Like, you know, he is certainly the master of making these sets and making things look insane and beautiful, and
all of those curio objects that most likely came from his own collection, his own house. You know, all those pickled fetuses and all those things.
That's been confirmed.
Yeah,
It's been confirmed that those belong to him. Yeah.
I knew it. Yeah,
from the
it had to
personal
be.
collection of Guillermo Del Toro.
He has an entire house dedicated to the collection he has, like separate house. Yeah.
This is what I hear, and I find it interesting, this idea of creators with their own. I have a friend, he teaches yoga, and he told me about, if you walk past David Lynch's house, there's two houses. There's the house that is a house, and I think his wife is mostly in most of the time, and then across the way there's this house with like a red garage with like a symbol, and that's where he did his like weather recordings during the pandemic. And that's like his studio. Apparently he just sleeps there. So I love this idea of like there's your house and then there's your like creation house, and it
That's
sounds
the Red
like Del
Room.
Toro,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's the Black Lodge.
The Black Lodge, yeah.
Del Toro has his own Black Lodge. It's just horror history, and I think it even toured at like a museum exhibition, went around city to city at one point.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.
There is a quote I found. I read this great coffee table book about the history of horror not too long ago. It was like an old Christmas present. I was like, I just need to actually read the whole thing. It's edited by Stephen Jones, and there's this quote about the culture of horror in the USA has always had almost as much to do with carnival-style promotional gimmicks as with the films themselves. He lists Not Quite Respectable, A Guilty Pleasure, A Glimpse of Another World Where Transgressive Things Can Happen, and let's face it, often a bit tacky. It's a great little quote that I actually screenshotted it. I was like, I got to bring this up to the guys. And also, it's a really good book, The Art of Horror Movies. It has a bunch of posters. It's really cool. I know, Brian, that's cool. Very up your... I think you'd really especially dig it. Great coffee table book. But, yeah. And then it brings to mind Todd Browning's Freaks.
Freaks. Mm-hmm.
Which there is, at the end, you might have noticed a little carnival barker sort of standing... When he comes back, there is a character very similar to Freaks. The poster is up in the office.
The dog boy?
Not the dog boy. There's a character that looks with like a sort of a very, very tiny... a demure character with a large head, and that is apparently an echo of a character from Freaks. And then it got me looking into the history of like horror and movies and carnival. There aren't as many, but it's surprisingly kind of everywhere. So there's like Circus of Horrors, this 1960 British film that's an AIP, Corman film. And then there's a 1970 film called Nightmare Circus. Alan Rudolph directed that. Really great, underrated director. Worked a lot with Altman. And then I would argue Elephant Man kind of falls into this category. Like,
sure, yeah, oddity, yeah.
Because Merrick is like a geek in many ways. And then like I feel like the 90s, there's all this dangerous circus imagery, especially in like dinosaurs were back, right? Or like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And then even like Princess and the Frog later with Mardi Gras. Like there's all this weird haunted imagery circus stuff, carnival, scary, Something Wicked This Way Comes, Bradbury. It's been in the American pot, like boiling for so long. So like I'm surprised there aren't more films like Nightmare Alley. I love it also that it isn't just that. Eventually it's also just like Chicago, the mansion. I love the film. I'm such a big fan.
Couldn't tell, yeah.
I am not an animal!
It's funny, yeah, because like it definitely, both movies, both the 47 movie and this one, the 2021 version, like have this, very strong theme of this, easy virtue where you can be cleansed of your sins. It's the drive-through car wash for the soul, and it's you can just everyone looking for those kinds of answers and finding them in different places, whether that be through a mentalist act in a sideshow carnival on a dusty old road, or in a fancy New York place, or in Kate Blanchett's gold adorned office. Everyone's like able to try and get those things. Everyone's seeking those quick answers and things that they can unpack. I mean, just think about how like funny and impatient Richard Jenkins is, the Ezra Grindle character in this one.
Scary.
I paid you, goddammit, I paid you. And it's like, okay, buddy, like
scary dude.
Yeah,
it's funny because like in this one, yeah. Like they made him a lot more scary.
Also, they gave him more backstory of beating women, right? Like that was also part of the horror around him.
Yeah, because like in the 47 version, he has a lot of guilt around this woman who died, but we don't know why exactly. Or at least not that I can recall.
This one was a botched abortion that he forced this person to get.
Right, which is something they probably wouldn't be talking about in 47.
Right.
So this guy is painted as a lot more brutal, a lot maybe less sympathetic. Mm-hmm. But that scene in particular, like drove me crazy because it was like it was something that it was a quality about this Stan Carlisle in the 2021 version that seemed to be lacking for me, which is like in the 47 version, he's good at what he does. He's good at gaining people's confidence, and he's very wise, and like, you know, he can see all the little angles that everyone's trying to work. He works that sheriff early on, you know, he's able to, like, you know, work the crowd and all these other things. And in the 47 version, if you'll recall, he was like having Grindle eating out of his hand, right? In this one, he's like barely hanging on to this con, and like the guy's like, you know, like just, you know, barking at him, whatever, and he can't find a way to, you know, judo move him into his confidence. And he's like, okay, quickly, we have to do it, we have to do this now. And that's what sort of propels him to do the, you know, dressing up, what's her name, Rooney Mara, to look like this dead person. As opposed to this being like the culmination of his con, and he's just on the edge of pulling it off, and it all falls apart, you know?
Well, I kind of liked how they did that, because he still did take the sheriff, right? There was still that moment where he saved the entire carnival from getting shut down by taking the sheriff back and giving him the, you're this, you're that, I'm the mentalist, and I'm looking at your past. They still did that, but then with this one, and I felt like this with the old movie, that the ending was a little hokey. The person was way too close. You'd be able to see it. And in this one, because he rushed it, he brought Rooney Mara too close, and then the whole thing went down because of that, because Richard Jenkins rushed the ghost, or what he thought was a ghost, and then, you know, blew up the whole thing. And
but that is the mark getting one over on you, not the other way around.
Right, but that was leading up, because, like you said, he was in a rush to do this one. Jenkins was not the easiest of going of marks in this instance. He needed to really work at this one, and he just couldn't figure it out. So he just kind of threw this idea at him, which, you know, failed miserably. Which
right.
I hear what you mean. I really am intrigued by your point. How Tyrone Power is so suave and effortlessly charming and beguiling and able to win one over. And it does feel like Bradley Cooper is sort of building the parachute as he's thrown out of the plane.
He always has the stink of desperation about him when he's doing these cons, and I'm like, geez, like, how are you ever going to gain the confidence?
I think there's a couple interesting things here at play. One are just different styles of movies in different eras, because like the leading man used to have all the quips, used to, you know what exactly to say at the right time. You know, even side characters would have like really generous patter. And in the modern era, right? I mean, very faulty protagonists. I mean, the guy starts, you know, you see him like dragging a body. I mean, what he does to his father.
Awful. That was the worst.
Horrible.
He's completely unsympathetic by the end, right? Like, you can't.
Yeah. So there is this like element of like.
What, you wanted a blanket? Fuck your blanket.
Oh man, I hated that scene so much when he just leaves the window open. Oh my god, man!
It was that makes it so much more like raw nerved for me, and for all the films nominated this year. Like seeing something like that's like a Tarkovsky. That is like cruel human behavior. That's like not, you don't see that in like major mainstream American films these days. And there's this other interesting thing. I just think it's a different way of like approaching the protagonist, right? Yeah. Because in like the classic Hollywood studio system, they couldn't be wrong, right? Or if they were maybe the anti-villain, maybe going to the 50s, 60s. The anti-hero. My mistake. You know, a bit edgy, but for the most part, they had to be like on the right side of the road. Also, Bradley Cooper's kind of a maniac. He learned how to fight for this role. Because just to make it look like he could fight, you know, he doesn't really fight like box or anything. So I don't feel like he's gonna like phone in. I feel like his days of like, he does it once in a while. He'll do it for Eastwood. Like he popped up in The Mule as just like a random CIA dude. Like I feel like his days of like kind of phoning in a star performance, a leading performance. Not that he ever did that, but I just think it was different. Now he's, you know, Bradley Cooper auteur, right? So I feel like part of the roughness of this Stan Carlisle is Bradley Cooper beating the shit out of himself. You know what I mean? In a way, you know, because he is very committed. I mean, I say that with praise. He's incredibly committed to his performances.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to what you were saying, Jeremy. Like, I think some of the cons worked. I think they worked too well in some, like the Kimballs, Judge Kimball and Mrs. Kimball, Mary Steenburgen's character.
Great cameo.
It worked. Yeah, that was a great cameo. It worked so well for them that she believed wholeheartedly that once they passed on, they would see their deceased son and be with him again. And because of that, she decided to shoot her husband and then shoot herself in the eye.
Well, she wanted to accelerate that timeline. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, but wouldn't that mean the con worked? Like the information that was given to them?
Totally. And like, you know, he got her and seemed to get most people in that mentalist act that he was doing, right? I guess, you know, it's a couple things. Like, one, the movie's long, right? And it's about as long as I think the original. But where the original starts is he's already a carny. He's already a part of this world. He already knows some of the ropes and, you know, knows how to con a little bit. So that when we see him step up to doing the sheriff in the 47 version, you know, everyone can like kind of look around the corner and be like, oh shit, this guy is legit, right? Because he's already been in that world and he knows what to do. In this one, he was still like, you know, learning how to tie a sheep shank or whatever.
He was a Padawan. Yeah, he was an apprentice. Yeah, apprentice carny.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's just like he's all of a sudden the judo master of like getting these people to follow him, and it's like with the sheriff example in particular. So it's like, you know, he was a little too green to be doing that at that moment. Okay, fine. You know, we fast forward in time, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten some more experience in that and able to show that experience. Like when he like fakes out the lie detector machine, for instance, like that was a good way to show that, okay, he kind of knows what he's doing, right?
That's the last scene they shot, by the way, before COVID shut the production.
Ah, interesting.
Oh, really?
There's this weird like list of films that have a gap in the production schedule, and those are all coming out now. I think that's going to start ending soon. But yeah, this is one of them where that was the last one filmed in the before times, as it were.
That's funny. I wonder how much they had to shoot afterwards.
I wonder if it was like because Card Counter had 1 day of production that they needed to do left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Paul Schrader was always on Facebook like, just 1 day. I just need one more day, then my movie's done. So
Right.
There was a life extinguished with it, and it was a child. It was a baby. You forced her to miscarry, did you not?
So the lie detector scene, you know, he shows that he's gotten a little more wise, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. Because sometimes he plays it like he knows the game and he's in on the joke and he knows how to like manipulate these moments. And sometimes he doesn't. And it's not clear sort of what causes those things. I mean, perhaps with the final Grindle thing, like, I've given you a fortune, like that moment, perhaps that's like, you know, maybe he's getting intimidated a little bit. This is
that's what I felt.
He's in the major leagues now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I'm getting at is like, at no point did you feel like he was going to fucking pull it off.
No.
And maybe that quality is not super important in this movie. But I think, you know, even though overall you could sense that, you know, Stan Carlisle's plans in the 47 version, you know, are eventually going to slide off the rails. You didn't think this was going to be the moment, right? Like you could have seen an avenue where he pulled it off in the 47 one. In this one, like there was no fucking way this is happening.
No.
Even if Grindle got on his knees and prayed and didn't go to, you know, touch her or whatever, like even if she was able to walk away through the mist, you know, the guy, you know, his bodyguard guy and
Holt McElhaney from Fight Club, yeah.
Yeah.
His name is Robert Paulson.
Oh, great. I did not put that together.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Right.
Good shout, yeah.
and
Holt McElhaney, I think his name is. Yeah.
Yeah, Holt. That's a funny
What a
first
great
name.
name, man!
Yeah.
I wish my name was Holt. I should have just named my kid Holt. What am I thinking? I had all control.
You blew it. I mean, well, you can go change it. I mean, I think they give you a certain amount of time, right?
He doesn't even know what his name is.
Yeah, he doesn't know what his name is.
Yeah, it's fine. There's a certain amount of time. There's like 18 years that you can change things. Yeah.
You just tell him his name's Holt. He won't know the difference.
He could be whatever. He's now Hiram.
Hiram Holt.
Hiram Holt sounds like a great villain in like an 80s.
Yeah, maybe an anti-villain.
An anti-villain, exactly.
What you're saying is so true to... Okay, so one thing that Del Toro banged home is that noir is like Catholicism, which I thought was a very interesting point.
Sure.
The idea that like the game is rigged. And because, you know, for anyone who grows up Catholic, the idea of original sin is just kind of there, you know? We're already screwed. It's about proving that we're not these horrible creatures that live in sin, quote unquote, right? And then the idea of noir, that like the systems are against you, the game is rigged. There is a shared dimension between noir and Catholicism that he draws on, and it has like made very clear in interviews. And also mentions Jungian connections. Like there's a lot going on in, I think, his decision to have Stan Carlisle. Not only, you know, does it reflect the book, but it is such a horrible ending, right? Like ending up back, you know,
the Tales from the Crypt ending, the comeuppance.
Yeah,
it is you know what? You're actually right. There is a very Tales from the Crypt. This could have been a half an hour episode.
Sure, certainly.
Instead, it's like a 2 hour plus.
Just
call
it the geek,
it's
right?
almost 3 hours. Yeah.
Right. You're absolutely right. And what I meant by circular isn't exactly circular in that like the person dragging the corpse isn't the geek, but the idea that when he does that, he then goes into the streets and seeks just like a random job, like being back at that point again, but arguably lower because you're not even seen as a human being.
And now drinking, because that was the new thing, right? He didn't like alcohol in this. Couldn't stand.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
one take. That last scene was one take. That was the laughing. They did it in one take. They were prepared to shoot all day. But
which
he
one?
nailed it on the first.
Like I Was Born for It when he had the Jumanji beard. That thing.
That was it.
It is a Jumanji beard. I Was Born for It is a little bit different than the original when he said I was made for it. So this kind of you know I don't know, I guess says that this is kind of his fate. It was always his fate to become the geek. And it kind of just changes the meaning totally, in my opinion, of that last line, and it kind of gives it a little bit more weight.
I agree, and it goes to the baby. You know, it ties in a bow into the imagery. You know, it's yep.
What was the Willem Dafoe's backstory that was possibly made up on the baby? What was it?
Oh, that it killed. So it had an enlarged head, and when the mother was giving birth to the baby, it killed the mother at birth. And it was still a stillborn baby, but it also killed the mother. So it was like a cursed pickled fetus is really what it was. That he used it as a good luck charm, but then he all of a sudden you find out that he hawked it to Tim Blake Nelson at the end to try to get $5 or whatever, right? Yeah.
Right. You know, when the chips are down, everything's for sale, even Quato. But I guess
Quaid. Open your mind.
Yeah, I guess the Quanto thing, like, it was a little lost on me, but
yeah,
you know what it is? It's like because the Stan Carlisle here like wasn't charming. Like, it's like okay, he was able to fool the sort of Mary Steenburgens of the world, who were already just like hopelessly insane. Anybody else who wasn't completely, batshit delusional like she was, wasn't fooled by him. Like none of his friends were charmed by him. Like, Molly didn't give a shit about him. Like she wasn't charmed by him. Think about the scene when all the friends came over.
Yeah. When they got the tarot reading and
when they got the exactly. They got the tarot reading.
They didn't buy his BS, as it were.
In the other one, like he had to like brush them off because it was like, oh, I'm too good for you guys now, right? Right. But in this one, they were brushing him off.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right? And it's like he couldn't even charm his friends. You know what I'm saying? That's the part that like kind of drives me crazy in this one because it's like at least there was this like faint glimmer of hope you could see that this guy could pull this shit off in the 47 one. In this one, like, not even close, man. Like, he was just the guy schlepping tent poles, you know what I mean, the whole time. And, like, he started off as that, railroad hopping bum, and he became the railroad hopping bum, like, or stayed that the entire time. I mean, perhaps this is because, he kills his father and burns the house down, and from that moment on, he's, just like completely damned, but it's like a slow motion death or whatever.
Woof.
And perhaps that's kind of what they're going for, but like his ability to make the rise or whatever and make it seem plausible, like, to me, I was like never buying it. It was weird. Like I didn't even have that like sort of suspense that, ooh, maybe he can pull this one off. Like,
I'd argue that there's almost too much film. It's that phrase, give you enough rope, et cetera, you hang yourself. I mean, the film is a bit bloated. It's a bit overstuffed. So perhaps with some editing, it might have been a bit more convincing if it,
But where do you edit though? And I think that this is
know.
more of a direction and performance thing that Jeremy is referring to. And this movie was
like a story
elongated
thing,
by
guess,
quite a
yeah.
bit with a ton of new backstory, right? That we've never
Yeah.
gotten before, mostly with Stanton Carlisle. But yeah, I think that this is more of a performance thing, right, Jeremy? What you're talking about? This would be more of
not performance necessarily. It's like it's a story thing. It's writing. It's like it's not a matter of like if he came off more charming or less charming. It's like were they able to give him enough of these characteristics, the Stan Carlisle character that I mean, if they were able to give Stan more of those charming characteristics, you'd then be able to buy that he'd be able to like have this influence over people.
I see what you're saying.
you obviously don't find Bradley Cooper as handsome as I do, because that dude could tell me to do anything and I'll do it.
I didn't find him as handsome as Tyrone Power, that's for sure.
Tyrone Power is a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
I do see what you mean, especially because the only time you really do see that implemented, surprisingly too, is the sheriff sequence.
Right, which also made it kind of feel out of place. You're right. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I do feel like, though, because he isn't that effortlessly charming, it speaks to the fact that he is even more of a con man. He learned this from he learned this
Finding
from a
the
book.
con.
Yeah.
Literally, a guy he accidentally poisoned, steals his book, gets, a hand job from his wife. And
So he does accidentally. Sorry, I do want to bring that up. He does accidentally kill him, or he murders Pete.
I think it's an accident. Because he asked about it earlier, which to me, in in cinema language, that to me means if he's asking about it, he's confused about it. Yeah. So it does seem like an earnest mistake. Also, because he just went through all that shit with his dad. Like, I don't know if he wants to revisit doing that. I don't.
Right. Oh, that's okay.
He did do it though, so he's capable of it.
And he killed the geek, right? He slowly killed the geek. He beat the hell out of it, and he slowly was. Then they had to drop him off at some random hospital, right? Because the guy was slowly dying.
Right.
Yeah.
They had to drop him off at the emergency room and run away.
He blasted that guy a couple times, man. He just beat him to death.
But did we see if his nose came off or not?
Dude, Del Toro likes to remove eyes and noses and Holt McCallany's entire head in a car wreck. Like, that was just disgusting. But
it was disgusting. It was
show me, I love it. Yeah, give me more gore, baby.
It was also disgusting when they was pulling the bone shard out of his knuckle.
That was awesome.
It reminded me so much of his Creature from the Black Lagoon movie where Agent Van Alden just pulls his rotting finger off. I was disgusting. Yeah. Yeah, it was like, okay, Del Toro just can't help himself, and yeah.
Let's just remember, Shape of Water won Best Picture. It's one of the strangest things.
I love Shape of Water.
I love it too. I just don't associate it with...
Let's remember that Crash and Green Book won Best Picture.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's right next to Crash and Green Book. It's just as bizarre to me of a choice, but I love that movie.
I said leave them be. Can't leave them in the rain. Don't pretend you give a shit with me. You hungry? I'm starving. Come on, steak and eggs on me.
I like that he's unlikable because it makes it easier to see what a shitbag he is.
I guess it's like, you know, but
even though my mom still thinks the ending is sad, because this is the one she saw. She hadn't seen the original one. She saw this one. She's like, that was a really sad movie. And I finally, you know, watched it, and she was over here, and she saw the ending, and she goes, wasn't that sad? And I'm like, dude got what he deserved. I'm not too sad about it. I was doing one of these at the end. I'm like, good, he's the geek. The only thing I was upset about is I wanted to see him as the geek for a little bit, like they do with the original movie. You know, and the geek actually escapes, and then Elektra kind of comes back and gives him a little bit of hope. And if you remember that, she like kind of comforts him at the end, which we don't get that in this one.
You took that as hope. I took it as like this like contrast of like, look how fucked up he is, and look how her life turned out. And this is in the 47 version. Again, in the 47 version, I hate to do this comparison, and it's funny because it's like, you know, again, you know, comparing the remake to the original. You know, it's not necessarily very productive, but it is in the sense that in this case, the original got a lot of things right that they changed and sort of made more complicated or unnecessarily difficult in the new version. And what I mean by that is like that. Okay, so he's very unlikable, not just to the audience, but also to all the characters around him. I mean, for some reason, Willem Dafoe kind of buddies up to him. David Strathairn buddies up to him.
But he's a scumbag, too. He's the one that makes geeks. He poisons people to make... I'm sorry, he drugs them with opium to get them hooked. And then, he's a scumbag, too.
I wasn't saying that he wasn't a scumbag. But
okay, yeah. I'm saying that's why they would get along, though.
I
right?
see.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they game recognized game on that one.
Right, yeah.
But you know how Tyrone Power like charms the pants off of sort of three women in that one. In this one, you know, Toni Collette gives him a hand job for no reason. She doesn't seem to be charmed by him in any way, but just wants
sexually.
To be.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the first time that's happened. I feel like a young man in the circus, when that comes around, I feel like there might have been other instances of that character.
But she did say that Pete treated her bad and made her cry, made her feel bad, right? He
wasn't a great dude.
Which is what? I mean, was she lying? Because like Pete was the sweetest fucking guy in this one.
Yeah, he was so cool.
In the previous version, like he was a total asshole, and he was an alcoholic, and it was a you know, kind of sympathetic in that way because he was just this broken down old man. But he was also a jerk all the time. In this one, he's super fucking sweet every time you see him. Like
and he actually is okay teaching some of his secret code.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit about the code. It's not worth its weight in gold.
Put your finger here and put your nose here. And then he was making like cigarettes appear out of nowhere. I was like, damn, I love this guy. I love magic so much in movies.
It's funny that you say that though. Like weirdly, the drinking stuff can make me imagine he could be like a real monster when they're all alone. And
perhaps
the niceness is
all I'm saying is that like her perception of it versus what we were shown is completely different.
Yeah, we didn't see any of that violence against her or any of that like at-home stuff between those two.
No,
it was always with Bradley Cooper there, right? Yeah.
I mean, so it kind of read to me as like maybe she was playing him just the same way she had the upper hand while he was in the tub there.
Same way as Cate Blanchett playing him later.
Totally.
I like that though. There isn't like a scene where we see him being like a total asshole because it does complicate things a little bit. Because I feel like that's what the old one did. So it's Strathairn's character.
Pete. Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes it so easy to be like, oh, well, he's dead. Oh well, you know. With this one, it's like, oh, that's kind of awful because he did take you under his wing in a way.
But I mean, in both versions, he doesn't seem to poison him on purpose. I mean, like I know it's a little ambiguous, but it doesn't seem like he would poison him on purpose. Now, in the 47 version, it almost seems like he did because he's hyper ambitious. In the 21 version, it's like, you know, he's just kind of drifting along. He's a drifter as he drifts into the circus and just kind of floats along in the lazy river of, you know, conning people and sees what he can get away with.
Wouldn't there be an interesting angle to the film where Stan Carlisle did it on purpose both times, but the way that the story interpreted it, the way that the narrative interprets it is that it isn't. like I find that kind of stuff very interesting. Like when characters like live outside of their creators. I mean, hey, there maybe is an argument that he did do it on purpose. I don't think he did, but I love that thought experiment that he knows that he did it on purpose, but what we're shown and what he says is that he didn't.
I just love talking movies and everyone's got their own version of it. It's just great. That's what makes movies so fucking awesome.
Totally. Oh, totally.
Yeah. And I really wanted to like this movie. Everyone seemed to like it around me. I mean, we should have brought my brother on again. Like he
liked it?
Loved it. He loved it.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Let's back up a second.
You got
Okay.
the wrong Floyd brother on here. Like, let's get Michael on instead. But it wasn't working for me.
Were you surprised that it got a Best Picture nomination?
I don't know, because like Del Toro is like an Academy darling at this point a little bit.
Yes.
Gotcha.
You know, he's got this incredible cast. It has,
amazing production,
amazing production design. You know, sort of like a lot of the things that the Academy tends to go for. You know, maybe people playing a little against type. I mean, Kate Blanchett playing an absolute monster is really interesting. I mean, she plays all kinds of things, I guess, but it was exciting seeing her play someone so like, just outwardly evil.
I don't know what her motive is. That's one of my problems with the film. She does feel like she's in a bit in a different film, and besides just out of interests of like money, why is she doing this?
Yeah.
That's
is this
like
just to screw Stanton, and she found this mentalist that she kept.
It's
he was her mark.
It's a lot of effort on her part to do this.
Absolutely,
yeah.
It's a long con, right?
What
she has a long con, but
Yeah.
okay, in the original, like things fall apart, and she's like, "Ooh, I need to pull my parachute here. My parachute, I've always had it, which is I'll give you some singles." You'll run away, hopefully thinking you got it, get far enough away where you can't get me. And even if you do, I've got an excuse. In this one, she like pulls the rug on him for no reason. Gets into a position where it looks like she's going to die. She has it's like Detour. She's got the like phone cord around her neck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's about to go out. And the police show up within 5 seconds. They're actually waiting in the waiting room, which is interesting. And she pulls the rug on him and does this thing, but it's like wait, so she just did it for the 100,000 or just to fuck with him? But like there was also something where it felt like she wanted like the violence from him. She wanted to like to get down to it, because like she's very cagey about why it is she has an entire torso length scar, like she's had an autopsy done on her.
Did she ever explain what that was?
Yeah, she did. She said, "Life."
What happened to you?
Life.
Oh, okay.
So she didn't explain what that was then.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, so like, what are we supposed to get out of that? That maybe, I don't know what she likes to tempt fate to feel alive or something. I don't know. But, there was something where she was playing some sort of game with him that, because he's kind of, he's not wise in this one. He is a mark in this one. Because he's a mark in this one, it's like, he doesn't realize he's getting played. Whereas like the last one, like it kind of made sense why all this happened is because, well, things fell apart and she had an exit strategy and he didn't, right? And in this one, she was just playing him, but not really for a reason. Like she didn't want him to do the Grindle con.
I read that as reverse psychology.
Yeah.
She was just no, don't do that, and it just kind of empowered him and fueled the flames of the con man.
Right. That's true.
That's how I saw it too, by making his recordings so accessible.
Yeah.
You give me something on that judge, any of the other higher ups, I'll make it worth your while.
I can tell you that Jennifer Lawrence and Lady Gaga, one of them either of them were at one point considered for the Rooney Mara part.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio and Lady Gaga doing mentalist acts. That's the other version of this movie in an alternate universe.
In an alternate universe. And, hey, maybe that one would have been a box office smash, unlike this one.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately...
This one didn't do well?
No, did the opposite of well. I would say, to the point where Martin Scorsese...
pleaded with people to go.
He took out an open letter in the LA Times basically saying, please go see this movie. It's great. So
wow.
It came out at like
See, Jeremy, you don't know what's up, man.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese liked this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he saw something I didn't, I guess. Yeah.
I did not see this and think slam dunk. Yeah. I liked it when I walked out of it, but it has grown on me. And upon rewatch, it's grown up. It's a sleeper for me. It was so. I walked out of it being a bit underwhelmed, to be completely honest. But it took over time. I've really glommed on to just the weirdness of this and the fact that this doesn't happen very often.
I'm the complete opposite. It had me from the beginning.
Cool.
It pulled me in, both visually, everything. Like, it just kind of came together. I really like Bradley Cooper in this. I'm surprised you didn't, Jeremy.
No. Hold on, real quick. Just to clarify on that, it's not that I don't like Bradley Cooper. In this, he's good. He plays the Okie really well. He plays the campfire hobo version of him really well. And he plays the early, very desperate guy very well. The part where he's like being psychoanalyzed and his eyes are tearing up and he just can't quite hold that thing back. I mean, he has a great performance in this. All I'm saying is that like the way his character is written and presented, it is in a way that like doesn't allow me to suspend the disbelief that he can get to this level of success, in doing the show in New York and like, or that maybe he could like possibly pull it off. And because I'm not invested in him being able to pull this thing off, I'm like, well, it is a it's like this form of dramatic irony where I'm aware that everything he's doing is destined for failure, but he's not aware of it. And I find it less interesting than if I'm sort of like somehow believing his con that he can pull this thing off. But he can't.
You might have liked it more with Leonardo DiCaprio, because that is Catch Me If You Can. That is literally Catch Me If You Can in a nutshell, is the charm of him pulling off these cons.
Okay, but
he'd be fodging checks in this one, though.
Fodging checks. Yeah, we got a check hanger or whatever it's called. But like in Catch Me If You Can, he's super charming. Now, you can see him like building the plane in the air sometimes of like, how he's going to like figure this out, but he always has like a judo move to like pull on people, like the really streetwise high-priced escort that Jennifer Garner plays. He finds a way to turn that on her, and it's like the whole thing, like he's doing that every single time. Like when the FBI come in to like bust him in Florida or wherever that was, like he flips it on him. He's like, no, we're from ATF or whatever. I've got this guy. See him? He's right out there. Right? He's got all of the he's got all the moves, and he's convincing in that. And so you're, I don't know what, like more invested in him being able to pull it off. In this one, like at no point do you think he's ever going to be able to pull it off. And because of that, I'm feeling like, it's. I'm watching everything with this ironic remove as opposed to being sort of invested in the story.
No, I hear you. But it also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like one of the critiques you have is Bradley Cooper is charming because the plot says so, versus it actually working as like spellbinding on me, an audience member, right? It's like, and I get what you mean.
Absolutely. I mean, like think about like Rooney Mara's character, for instance. Like, okay, like the Molly character killed me. Like in the 47 version, she was like hopelessly in love with him, and when she ran out of options to convince him otherwise not to do this thing, she was going to run away, and he charmed the pants off her to stay for the one final job or whatever, right? In this one, she hated him the whole time. It was crazy. It was It was like, wait, how did you convince
he's
her
an awful
to do this thing?
person.
Yeah, but even like convincing her to do Grindel's long dead mistress or whatever, like it almost didn't make sense in this one because she hated him and because she wasn't charmed by him or felt compelled to do as he bids. You know what I mean?
It seemed like an economic thing with her. That was my reading.
Perhaps, yeah, but then she had no problem running away and never seen him again. Now maybe it was like it was a very different line he crossed after killing two guys.
I mean, hey, I think that's why. I mean, the minute you start to investigate her, a lot of people. I mean, not to get serious, but like a lot of people stay in abusive relationships because they don't have other places to go. So like you
and
ask, why did
in
she stay with him?
1939 or whatever this is supposed to take place.
You're even more right. That's even
right.
So like,
no,
I think that she just saw a bit of a goose egg, and as bad as it was,
Mm-hmm.
I get it, but that is like that would have been really interesting, and I wish they had explored that. But like that's not how it was presented. It was just like it was almost presented like, well, she did it because she loves him and cares for him and believes in his project or whatever. Kind of. Although it wasn't really that.
Well, to me, it felt like the rot of doing it, I think, got to her too. I might be wrong in reading that, but I feel like she does have a modicum of decency.
Well, totally, and Molly, the Molly character, had that in the first one as well, and she didn't want to do all that stuff because her morality said so, right? Like that. This is the line. I'm fine doing it as a show. I'm fine doing it in the carnival atmosphere or the nightclub, but this is over the line.
Did you read the thing about how Del Toro's dad was kidnapped? Insane.
And then Psychic showed up to tell his mother where his father was, and that's kind of the same kind of parlor tricks that were being pulled here.
Yeah, the idea of exploiting vulnerable people.
Yeah.
He was warned, beware when the psychics show up, and sure enough, he had to like kick them out of the house because in Mexico they would just like, I mean, I think this is just anywhere, but like psychics sort of like exploit, but like particularly at this time where he was from, psychics would show up basically guaranteeing knowing where the father was, and that same sort of just the grossness of that trickery, desperation that people will pay, as you see with what's his name's character. You will pay lots of
the Grindel,
you see.
I paid you a fortune.
Jenkins, that's his name.
Richard Jenkins,
yeah. I mean, and Richard Jenkins is amazing in this, by the way. But sorry,
horrifying. He's
as always.
Yeah, as always. Yeah.
People will go to people will profit off of these tragedies, and he had this personal tie, and it is a very good story to connect to the film. It's so horrible that he went through that. I mean, getting your father kidnapped and then having someone say, "I know what happened," and then having to tell him to fuck off.
No, I mean it's terrible, and it sucks that it happened to him, and it's wild that like that ended up in the movie in a way. It felt like if it was plausible that he was able to pull some of this off, you could be invested in it, and then it's more of a tragedy when it all kind of falls apart. And everyone's trying to grab that old brass ring, and they fuck it up every time in these types of movies.
It sounds like you prefer the 40s, the Tyrone power.
And maybe that's the thing is like I remember when we were watching those movies, like that was my favorite of those, and I do remember really liked the 47 version, and I was really surprised how much I liked it. So maybe that plays into it too. I mean, obviously it does. I mean, I keep comparing it. I just like I found myself like disinvesting a little bit.
We got a little mind reading show.
What would I have to do?
Ain't nothing to it. Carney speaks like a song. It sounds Southern to Southerners and Western to Westerners.
I've got one last bone to pick with Mr. Del Toro, which is that I felt like every single camera angle in this was about 5 degrees off the place where I wanted to be.
Wow.
Every single time.
I was going to talk about how much I loved the cinematography of this movie.
No, it was gorgeous, but it's like the angle you wanted to be for this moment and that moment, and like where we see the geek for the first time, or when we realize the like the whole con is falling apart for the Grindle thing. Like, we're just to the side of where one would want it to be. And it reminds me of like when people used to shoot on film. And what would happen is like, you know, they'd set up the camera. The DP would be, or the operator would be looking through the eyepiece. And the director, you know, might be standing right off to the side of that and seeing a totally different performance 5 degrees to the left or right, or, you know, the top or bottom. And then you'd be seeing on the camera itself. And like, and it kind of reminded me of that.
I wonder if it goes to the hallway thing of like keeping things more narrow. Because I know what you mean.
Or off kilter or something. Yeah.
Things do seem oddly close together or misplaced. I wonder if there is a method to that of not framing it in the most traditional way. I mean, that's also, you know, playing devil's advocate of he did it on purpose. You know, that's a very easy take to have.
No, totally. And I can't say that this is something that happens in all of his movies. And maybe this is something that like he was doing on purpose to, you know, create that off-kilter effect. I just, it was strange because it felt like it would have had a much stronger impact to me if there were moments that this was happening in versus the entire time. And I really started to notice it after the first like 20 minutes. I was like, wow, that's a weird angle. That's a weird angle. That's a weird angle. Everything's a weird angle. And it had this interesting effect on me.
It's almost like it was shot in a nightmare alley.
Exactly.
That's where we end the show.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do one more thing. We're gonna lighten it up a little bit, which is a funny like booze history thing. So this is supposed to be taking place in the late 30s, early 40s, and you see the guys at the very end, like sort of the homeless folks in that encampment that he comes out of his little shack and comes to the fire, and they're like, oh, you've got to, you know, pay for your booze here, right? And he like hands him his watch, right? In that scene, like the bottle they're passing around is what is now like sort of an expensive bottle of Martinique aged rum, like the oldest age they carry. But at the time, because, you know, Caribbean rum was still in production during Prohibition and the Great Depression and even World War II, you know, you could get it for, you know, a dime a dozen, right? And like it's funny
interesting
how
detail.
It like at that time was considered, you know, the gut rod or whatever, even though now and I'm sure even then it was, you know, a very good and well-made spirit.
And you can follow Jeremy Floyd at Distinguished Spirits on YouTube.
You can.
That's a cool observation. I love
Very
that.
cool.
Very cool.
I that was a bottle of booze to me. It was just like in the frame. I'm like, I get it's booze. I didn't know what it was.
They labeled it, so I was like, okay, well, that's interesting.
No, I would never have picked that up.
There was another detail. There's at one point some town in Florida is mentioned. Like some of the carnies are like, we just came from there, and that is
Jupiter.
I don't think it's Jupiter, but I think Gibtown maybe.
That was from American Horror Story. They were in Jupiter, Florida, with their carnival.
Oh, gotcha.
Their freak show. Yeah.
I think Jupiter is where that weird rock garden is, where they filmed that, like Nudes on the Moon 60s exploitation film. There's like a weird rock garden in Florida that's been used.
Next week we'll be doing Nudes on the Moon.
Hey, it was on Criterion Channel, you know. Hey, Nudes on the Moon has a very respected following. But I love that detail, the period era detail. That one little carny town mentioned, we just came from there, doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that in the 30s was apparently. But I mean, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us again.
I love talking about a new film. I mean, as much as I love talking about noir, like classic noir, talking about something with threads to like actors that are alive is so refreshing. And,
exactly.
No, absolutely. And I think I'll try to end on a more positive note here real quick, which is that like what I also really appreciate about this movie, I know, I guess it apparently bombed in the box office and all this, but it is in some way in the conversation. And if we were to go back, 10 years or so, like you'd never hear about a film noir being made. And like, you know, if things were being pitched as film noirs, they were like, what else you got? Because, you know, it just wasn't happening. There was kind of a glut of film noirs in the late 90s. And then I think, with a lot of them not doing well financially, you got people rejecting them sight unseen. And perhaps with Guillermo Del Toro doing something like this, it helps lend a little more prestige to it.
Oh, yeah. And I think there are, Soderbergh is still working in the neo-noir, postmodern, it pops up. It still pops up. It's just surprising to see something so directly noir and like old-fashioned in Oscars race and part of the conversation.
Yeah, that too.
Probably not going to win. Probably not going to go home with. I mean, right before we wrap, I just want to point out the shot of the circus wheel and that distant shot of just the circus wheel lit and the planes. I mean, beautiful. There are moments of this that or the house burning.
Wasn't that framed by him burying dead chickens that the geek just bit the head off too? That he was just taking them right outside the carnival and burying them.
I love that. I mean, it really.
There's a juxtaposition there, right? Del Toro is great about making these beautiful visuals, and then someone's head is literally getting ripped from their body on screen, but it all looks very pretty.
Absolutely, sacred and profane. He's very good at combining them. Yeah.
Alex, could you tell people where they can follow you?
Yeah, OnlyFilmNoir is my Instagram. That is where I do a lot of my sort of reviews of films from the past. I'm going to be jumping back into it. I took a little break to kind of focus on some other projects, but regularly on Instagram as OnlyFilmNoir. Yeah.
And speaking of film noirs, we're going to be doing some more film noirs next time. Is that right, Jeremy?
We are. It's funny. We already teased this one, but we're going to re-tease it.
We'll re-tease it. As we teased before, let me re-tease this one. We're going to be doing I Love Lucy Noirs. So this is all the noir films that Lucille Ball... This is Lucille Ball we're talking about, the actress, not Lucy as we know her from the show I Love Lucy. But she was in a lot of these film noirs. A couple of them I've watched already because we've got an episode coming up soon. But that's going to be The Big Street from 1942, The Dark Corner from 1946, and Lured from 1947. I really like Lured. That's a little preview.
So weird seeing her as not Lucy. Like, I remember when I was young.
Still hilarious, though. Still super quippy, yeah.
She popped up in, this Marx Brothers movie, Room Service, and I was like, oh, it's Lucy, but not Lucy. But I can't wait to do that episode with you guys.
And then we will be bringing back our noir expert, Alex, for this one. We'll see you soon.
Can't wait to come with the research. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Great talking and disagreeing about the films and agreeing about the films and picking them apart. Pleasure as always. Thank you so much for inviting me back. Really, really enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back next week.
Ciao.
When a man believes his own lies, starts believing that he has the power, he's got shut-eye. And when the lies end, there it is. The face of God staring at you straight, no matter where you turn. No man can outrun God's tent.